here we are. Welcome to the Awesemo NFL Live Before Lock, our second doubleheader of the short or the just started season here. Kyle, we didn't see this one coming. We didn't even really see this coming going into yesterday morning, but here we are, doubleheader for NFL for the second time already, a month into it. Hashtag 2020, where anything can happen. Dreams are possible and the absurd is on the regular. How are you doing? It's been like forever since we've chatted.
It's been a grip, yeah. And I like you said, I think maybe it won't be the last doubleheader we end up seeing. If we made it, a quarter of the way into the season before things went a little haywire. The NFL has probably handled it to the best of their ability, been flexible moving schedules. And it seems like they've kind of added some more. I know they added like conferences to talk with the teams. They're investigating Tennessee because they're not sure Tennessee was up to snuff on all their stuff. So I don't think the NFL season is going to go off the rails, but I do think we should kind of look forward to expecting the unexpected. It was a good week for me in DFS. I didn't bank anything, but I had a lot of like min cash, like 80th percentile type of lineups, and it was a profitable one. So I'll take it. No banks, but made money, so you can't complain.
Yeah, that sort of is where I was. I was kind of in the green all day with the exception of my cash lineups. I, on main slate DraftKings, am somewhere in the realm of 15% winning rate, not quite 20. It's been amazingly bad. Fortunately, I'm up on the year. I've done quite well in the short slate cash games, the head-to-heads, the three-mans, etc. But boy, that main slate, I'm getting at least 1-0 every week somehow. And by the way, I did not play Troutman and I did not play Cooks.
Yeah, my cash game lineup got dunked on. He said 15%. At first, I thought you meant ROI. I was like, nice.
No, that's win rate. Bad. If you ever see mine, I posted a bunch on Yahoo because I was making fun of myself earlier this weekend. I lost them all.
Nice.
I got clean swept.
Yeah, I went Cooks in cash, so it didn't matter. My day was toasted, but I play a lot more tournament than cash, and I had a good day in tournament, so not great, but good.
Yeah, I kind of like the strategy of building that one lineup and trying, but it ends up being about 5 or 10% of my total amount in play, so it really doesn't matter that much. It's just more that this is the one that I built for sure. Yeah. And then you're like, boy, maybe I should just skip these at this point. But in any event, just wanted to put that up there. A couple fun things that we do have. So we do have a doubleheader tonight, as we mentioned. We're not going to talk as much showdown for the first game here. The showdown prizes aren't very big because they're steering everybody to $1 million first prize contest on DK. And then FanDuel has, was it 200,000 at the top? In any event, it's
correct.
Like they did their usual like Sunday million basically, but on Monday for a 2-gamer. Pricing not the tightest. We've got a couple players who are out that are going to give us some wiggle room here. You may want to look at leaving a little bit of salary if you don't want to chop this stuff up at the top. But they kind of it looks like they softened it a little bit on DraftKings, and then without Devontae Adams, it just becomes I don't know who's replacing him, but you're not really going to spend all your salary for the most part. And if you're playing anything that was, the yesterday to today, which I did, it's like I'm leaving $1,300 on the table. I have nowhere else to spend it. It's just like, okay, whatever. That just is what it is. Don't feel bad. Don't try to max it all out. If some of your lineups as you're going through, maybe switch from Aaron Rodgers to Matt Ryan and just try to leave some of that differentiation available to yourself. Because otherwise it's going to be it's a little tricky because all of a sudden all my lineups are ending up being Rodgers, the Aaron Jones, and the Vikings. Not the Vikings yet. The Atlanta receivers. And you're just like, great, that's what everybody's going to do. So we're going to talk about tonight's slate here. We are brought to you by No House Advantage. We'll talk about them a little bit, but it's two key things that you want to know. One, promo code Awesemo gets you $20 matched on your first deposit up to $20. And if you refer a friend, as soon as they deposit, you get $5. It's over there at nohouseadvantage.com. They have a very slick and elegant interface, very simple on the computer. I like that. They do have a mobile app as well. And then they are a peer-to-peer site. So what that means is it's just like all the other sites that we're used to. We're playing each other. There is no house advantage. It is prop bets. So what they do is they give you about 60 or 70 contests or prop bets for whatever contest you're working on, like yardage tonight. Well, let's look at one for instance here. So Aaron Rodgers, his is interceptions. Over under is half an interception. So you can choose, do you want to go over or under? And then you put a confidence rating on that. You pick 5 of these 70 or so questions, and then it's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 with your confidence. And we have the odds here for you. So we've done the projections, we've figured it out. So right now we're saying, off the top of your head, Kyle, what would you say over under for interceptions for at 1/2 for Aaron Rodgers?
I know, like, generally our take is to go with overs on these. I'm actually going to go with the under, though, because his interception rate throughout his career is quite low, and they're big favorites, so he might not need to throw a lot. Generally, I think we do bet the over on a lot of half props on our No House Advantage odds, on our odds generator, essentially. But for Rodgers, I'm going to go under.
We are saying this one is under, and it's giving you a 31% advantage. So I know this is a 50-50 bet, but you're getting that advantage or implied value for you. If you don't understand the numbers, no problem. There's also a column that says bet the over or bet the under. The bigger or smaller the numbers you see there in the percentage differential and the absolute value, that's telling you the likelihood of something happening or the confidence rating. So definitely want to check that out. Fun way to get things done. All right, let's jump on in here. I forgot to pull the inactives, but I do know this afternoon that Sony Michel was placed on the injured reserve. I'm assuming they did finalize the transaction to put Damian Harris as active today. He had been on the injured reserve. So let me go double check that. The other big one we have is the later game. It looks like Davante Adams is ruled out. It looks like he's very, 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 very unhappy with that. Tweeted something earlier today along the lines of, I guess the medical staff knows my body better than myself, and I've done everything I needed to do to prove I can be on the field. I'm slightly paraphrasing, but imagine that with an angry young guy typing that. So that's what he did, and then he had to delete the tweet. I'm sure his agent was, don't do that. But then it looks like Julio and Calvin Ridley are shaping up to play. Julio missed last week with a sore hamstring. He's been kind of banged up throughout the season. Ridley's been dealing with an ankle issue, and then Russell Gage was actually in the concussion protocol, but he passed and has had at least 1, if not 2 full practices. So he's good to go there. So we just want to point all of those parts out. Starting off here with the New England side, and then I'm turning this over to you. So we said Cam Newton is out, positive COVID test, right? So we know that. Nobody else, no other positive tests for New England. So that's good and is enabling them to play. It's not Jarrett Stidham that is going to be the quarterback tonight. Is going to be veteran Brian Hoyer, who is with the Patriots for not his first, not his second, but his 3rd time. I want to point that out because Belichick trusts him. He's putting him in over Stidham, and he keeps bringing him back because he knows what to do. He knows the Patriot way. He's 35 years old, played for the New England from 2009 to 11, 17 to 18, and then this year. Despite playing in 23 games as a Patriot, he has yet to make a start for them. Most of that was in mop-up duty. He has 51 total passes while in New England. In his career, he has made 38 starts. He also has, let me see my notes, so I don't have all of it, but he has 300 plus yards in, I think, almost a third of his starts. So he's not a slouch. He's going to move the chains. And it's my opinion that it does not change our outlook on the New England receivers because, frankly, Cam looks to run so often this season. I don't think it's going to hurt them. He is a viable play. I'm turning this over to you. You've got the Pats, and then you can take the first crack at the Belichick backfield.
So we might be going to bat over this Brian Hoyer situation because I agree he was like a serviceable backup at one point in his career, but over the past 2 times that we've seen any sample on him, he's averaged, I believe it's 5.2 and 6.1, or it might even be 5.2 and like 4.9 adjusted yards per attempt. I think there was a point in his career at which you could argue he's one of the more comfortable backups to come in, and I still agree he probably knows the system, but just he looked awful with the Colts, and his numbers backed it up. You know, he wasn't moving the chains. So I think it does help that he enters a system that he knows. I don't want to say he has a ton of preparation time, but it isn't a game time decision where he didn't get a single rep of practice. I don't feel nearly as confident in you do in this passing game. I think my only saving grace is that Julian Edelman's, both his target share is like number 11 or maybe even top 10, and his air yard share is like number 1 in the league among receivers by a significant margin. He's, I believe, the only guy over 50% air yard share it's insane. He's actually both getting the same amount of targets he always gets, which is a ton, but moving downfield, which is awesome and new for him. So I feel like that volume insulates him from any bad quarterback play. The other receivers I'm not as confident in. And then moving to the backfield, it would be and is a good thing for Rex Burkhead that Sony Michel is out. That means he probably takes that Sony Michel role. He's kind of, I don't want to say a Swiss Army knife, but he's a guy who's good enough as a runner and he has the requisite size, whereas James White obviously doesn't. And he's good enough as a pass catcher, and Sony Michel doesn't have that skill. So he kind of just slots in wherever they need him to play. This week it's going to be in that Sony Michel role. But, I mean, Vegas thinks that this Brian Hoyer news is bad. They're down to 10.5-point underdogs on the road versus the best team in the NFL. I'm not sure that between the tackles role means much unless it just means he punches in a short touchdown or two. I don't think it means 15 to 20 carries. So for the backfield, I think James White, sneaky play. I'm not excited about playing Rex Burkhead. I'm not excited about playing N'Keal Harry. I think Julian Edelman is the only guy whose volume just cements him. It insulates him from any sort of bad external factors. It doesn't make him the absolute perfect play, but it certainly helps.
All right. So a couple minor counterpoints. So I will say I'm not diving into play Hoyer. I think he moves the offense, particularly against this Kansas City defense. My guess is they try to control the clock somewhat. That's probably going to be futile. So we might see it slow for the first quarter, first half. But if they're down 2 or 3 scores, who knows what's going to happen? Now, that doesn't mean Belichick's just going to start airing it out. He may just be content to be like, all right, let's just do the controlled passing game and just keep things moving and let's just get out of here. It's just whatever. He's not afraid to, he's like one of those NBA coaches that's like, yep, this one's a schedule loss back when they play 3 and 4 or 4 and 5. You're just like, yeah, whatever. We're just going to lose this one. I don't care. And we're not going to get worked up about it. Damian Harris was activated along with Gunnar Olszewski. They did put Sony Michel and Cody Davis on the IR. So, and then nobody else was really popped on their inactive list. So nothing unexpected other than the Michel news there. And then Hoyer, okay, I will grant you this. It was back in 2017 when he had his 350 yards. Let's see, he was playing for San Francisco against it was an early revenge game before he went to Indianapolis, but 350 yards there, 332 against the Rams the year prior to that. So now we're all the way back to 2016. This time with Chicago, put up 300, 397, 300, and 317. So point being, he's not the proverbial old guy off the couch that's coming in. Range of outcomes, sure, a multiple touchdown game, maybe 20% of the time. Feels about right for that one, but a 3 interception performance, I don't really think so, because I don't think Belichick's going to put him in a spot where he's not going to have likelihood of at least reasonable success. So think of the Sean McVay approach. We're going to scheme the offense to just keep things moving. We're going to get out of here, and maybe things get fluky. But when it comes to their defense, Patrick Mahomes does not really get sacked and does not really throw interceptions. And we also saw when needed, he reminded everybody last week that he can be incredibly mobile. Any Patriots tight ends? Izzo? I almost said Tom Izzo. Wrong sport. Wrong generation. I'm not really interested in these tight ends and anything outside of Showdown. And this Showdown slate, we won't talk about it a ton because there's not a ton of prize money available on short notice. So no, not really. I'd much rather look at any of the other tight ends we have on this slate. I think Tanyan is certainly in play. Hayden Hurst, I'm a little more lukewarm on, especially with Russell Gage coming back, but either of those guys, I mean, maybe you could argue that, like you said, they really don't have any other choice but to play with some tempo and pass a decent amount, and that could mean an extra target or two for Ryan Izzo, but I just haven't seen enough from him, and they already have 3 receivers who are getting some targets on a weekly basis, or a lot of targets, depending on which one you're looking at, that I'm not really interested in getting James White back. It just seems like that short to intermediate role is filled 3 times over for them before even trying to factor in a tight end. Yeah, and that's Izzo's got 5 targets on the year, 1 in the red zone, and then he's played 3 times the snaps of Devin Asisi, who has not been targeted yet. So yeah, You're not looking at anything. All right, now we're on the fun part. So I said last week, I made a joke in my column and said, it feels like about half of Patrick Mahomes' starts have been in prime time because I think last year they were on prime time 6 times and then they had playoff games and all of that. Ha, 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 that's funny. Yet here they are again, unscheduled on prime time. I've called him the Wizard, and he lives up to that main name, but he's working a little bit of his magic. The one thing I want to point out, and I see chat say more football, less COVID talk. You're going to want to know the COVID talk because here's an impact for this game. They play tonight. They play Sunday against the Raiders, and then they go to Buffalo for Thursday night football. That's 3 games in 11 days. So that's asking a lot. We already know we have not had OTAs. We haven't had much of a training camp. Didn't have preseason games. Yes, we're partway through, week 4 of the season, but we already know that teams have even said, yeah, we're not practicing nearly as much because we don't want our people close to each other, and we're worried about them getting hurt, and we're worried about all the soft tissue and injuries. So we're just trying to get everybody up to speed here. So that's a lot of games with not a lot of practice. If they can somehow get ahead or do things to control the game, I believe they will tonight, just looking ahead and saying, oh my God, we've got 2 more of these in the next 10 days. That also leads into Clyde Edwards. Are we going to call him Hilaire, or what were they calling him last week? Hilaire?
I've heard it pronounced that way, and Hilaire. It was kind of Hilaire. I'm not sure, but I like where you're going with this because I'm on the same track. I think we're seeing Aaron Jones come in as slightly, not a huge favorite, but slightly more popular. At least it was earlier today, more popular in our ownership projections. Kansas City is favored by a ton, and although all of their players are going to play a lot, if there's anyone you would prefer to have rest, it would be the best quarterback, this side of the year 2000. I don't know, at least the physically the most talented one. So I know that, you can make this argument for any one of their players that they'll want to get them rest. But if anyone could or should be shouldering the workload, you typically would point to a running back. So if they're up late, I don't think we see a lot of Patrick Mahomes, like you said. And that is the projection right now. They're 10.5-point favorites that were a few hours ago against, just a Patriots team that unfortunately comes in on the wrong side of sickness. So I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire is probably one of the 2 best running back plays on the slate just in terms of points. I think he has as much, if not more, touchdown upside as Aaron Jones. Maybe you'd argue that Aaron Jones has more receiving value, but I do think that makes Clyde Edwards-Helaire probably as good of a play on, or at least close to as good of a play on FanDuel. Probably still give a slight edge to Aaron Jones. We've seen his passing game work come up more when Devontae Adams is out. But given the ownership and the price discount, Clyde Edwards-Helaire would probably be my most owned running back relative to the field. I think I'm just going to press the lock button on him. I'll probably sell a lot of Aaron Jones because you can, like you said, pricing isn't super tight. You can play most of the guys you want. But I feel good, if not, better about Clyde Edwards-Helaire when you factor in price, when you factor in ownership for the exact reasons you're saying. They're favorites. It would make sense that they would want to give him a lot of work as opposed to airing it out 50 times a game. Maybe on Showdown, that also puts you on a little bit of Darrell Williams.
Yeah, that's where it gets kind of interesting. So up on our screen right now, we have the ownership projections, which is the popularity of the players that are going to be in tonight's 2-game slate. And this is up there with DraftKings. So we can see Aaron Jones at 80, Clyde Edwards-Helaire at 71. And then it drops all the way down to Todd Gurley at 31, Jamal Williams at 15, Rex Burkhead at 11, James White at 6. Tyler Ervin, a little bit interesting. Morning show / weekend / betting / college football / does shows with you, Matt G talked about how what is his name? Tyler Ervin was getting snaps in the slot role, and he had a nice comment, and I only caught a half second of their show, but all of a sudden they were talking about Ty Montgomery, and I'm like, wait, why are they talking about Ty Montgomery? And then he was making the comparison to him. So he did point out that, or on the part I heard, that he's getting snaps. This isn't like the Ty Montgomery when the cupboard is absolutely bare. They still have Aaron Jones. They still have some receivers. They got some tight ends. So this isn't the one where we've seen in the past where we're like, jam this guy in. He's not the primary option at any. He's just running routes when he's out there. So just be careful on that. But that just shows you that how top heavy the running backs may be for tonight. Now, if you're Bill Belichick here and you're going to be defending some people, do you choose to try, because the old we're going to slow down their best guy, do you slow down Tyreek Hill, and then does Travis Kelce make you pay? And then I said, but if you pay attention to Kelce, then you've got Hill. All right, let's divide our attention between them. Now you've got Clyde Edwards-Helaire, you've got Sammy Watkins, who's a veteran, absolutely solid in a variety of roles, and then Mecole Hardman is kind of coming on with Robinson, sort of maybe falling out of favor. We don't know. It's a 3-game sample size here, and they still have Mecole Hardman returning kicks and stuff. But he had a nice, what was it, like 4 catches and 70 yards and a touchdown or something like that the last time we saw him on the primetime slate. Very efficient. Volume's not really there for him, but this stuff can change at any time. And oh yeah, they have Pat Mahomes, who threw 50 whatever touchdowns it was 2 years ago, throwing passes to them. So what do you do? This is like an all-star team here.
Yeah, I mean, you can't do anything in some sense. I think if Patrick Mahomes is going to get the better of you, he's just going to do it. I think we've seen, I believe it's 4 games of Tyreek Hill versus this team. He's annihilated them twice. And then I know one time it was late in the season, one of the past 2 years, they bracketed him and he didn't do much. I would say the only thing is I doubt it's a running back. I think Bill Belichick, he spent a lot of draft capital on running backs lately, but I still think he's smart enough to understand that if you are going to attempt to take away a weapon, it's not going to be Clyde Edwards-Helaire averaging at best, 5 or 6 yards a carry. It's going to be Tyreek Hill, who can average like 20 yards a target in a game if he breaks off 2 long ones, or Travis Kelce, who, although maybe not quite as much of a deep threat, can beat you 5 times on a single drive. Do I have a strong lean as to which one it's going to be? No, probably not. I think Bill Belichick is smart enough to not do the same thing every time he faces a team. Right. Now he'll face them in this, close to this version of the Chiefs a number of times. My only lean is that it probably wouldn't be Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and also it very well could not matter. He could draw up a scheme to stop Tyreek Hill, and Hill gets behind the defense once, and that's the 150-yard touchdown, and then the rest is just great. So I wouldn't spend too much time really trying to get into the mind of Bill Belichick. 1, who knows? 2, there's very much a chance it doesn't work. Like I think the best defensive minds in the world, not every game, very few games, frankly, are going to be able to truly shut down Patrick Mahomes or one or both of his weapons. I think my only lean is that I think there's a reason, and obviously the under has come down, or the total has come down, just a reason to think that, like you said, maybe Bill Belichick just slow plays this game, even is not, shooting for a loss, but understands that a loss is certainly in the range of outcomes. And this game is just kind of meh. So that would have me on Clyde Edwards-Helaire. That would have me on maybe some of the shorter, and you talked about it, they just say, not that we're going to stop passing, but we just kind of keep it dink and dunk a little fast. That would have me on some of the James White. And so not that I'm full fading Travis Kelce or Tyreek Hill, but I'm just not as enthused as I was, going into this game with Cam Newton, which I thought was going to be an absolute shootout. I think I'm going to be more on Clyde Edwards-Helaire than any of the receiving weapons. And if I do have them, it'll probably be a decent amount of one-offs.
All right. The one thing that keeps Kelce in the mix is we're looking at Hayden Hurst, we're looking at Robert Tonyan, and then we're not looking at Izzo, or I forget the other, Devin Asiasi or whatever it is.
Devin Asiasi from, I think, UCLA.
I was going to say it's a West Coast team, and in my mind, as soon as I said that, I thought it was who was the Aztecs, or I don't know, San Diego State or San Diego.
Yeah, San Diego State. Yeah.
I don't. That was what popped in my mind. But yeah, I think he's a Southern California school, because I from the West Coast, do like to watch the West Coast football still, even though I've been out here in Virginia forever. So those are still the teams I follow, because my alma mater, University of Washington, is out there. So, and they're the teams that are usually on when my wife's asleep and I can watch whatever I want. So there we go. # married life. I see that it was the news god who I was chiding for talking about COVID. I thought we were going to have to throw hands, news god. So lucky it was you, because all the love. All right. Anything else that you want to hit on for this game here? And we'll circle back with questions, guys. We're at 6:25. 7:05 is lock time tonight. We got the showdown slate, larger showdown slate for this next game. So we'll talk about that, some context around that. And then we'll talk a little bit circling back for questions of whatever you guys need. So we have a lot of time tonight to do this. The reason we were kind of goofing around a little bit at the beginning is we want to get some of you guys in, but we knew this was going to go rather quickly through here. So anything else from this first game?
Yeah, I think even if you're running, you can probably run Clyde Edwards-Helaire and one other Chiefs weapon, because say Clyde punches one in on the ground, hits the 100-yard bonus, and Patrick Mahomes just throws 2 touchdowns. if Kelsey has an okay game and one of those goes to him, or if he gets both, that's probably a scenario where as long as the next game hits its total roughly, you get a Chiefs stack. It's such a small slate that you're probably getting, or it's very possible that you get multiple Chiefs sans Patrick Mahomes in the optimal lineup because he's going to be more expensive and more popular than the quarterbacks and the overall plays of the other game. So I wouldn't be too hesitant on running probably Clyde Edwards-Helaire and one other option from the Chiefs side, just because Patrick Mahomes is so expensive that it's possible, especially if you run like a Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Sammy Watkins potentially, who did lead the team in snaps outside of like obviously Mahomes in the lineman. He led the team in snaps last week, and he's done that he had the most targets in week 1. He's still a very integral piece of this offense. So I think a sneaky stack could be either Travis Kelce, just because, like you said, the tight end options are so miserable, or at least very undesirable after him, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire, or Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Sammy Watkins. You could go Mecole Hardman, but he's still not like purely running ahead of Demarcus Robinson. I know he outperformed him. He had a good week last week. Not too excited about these guys. I think I'm looking at this game as like a secondary stack. Literally everything is like either a primary or secondary stack. But I would stack the Chiefs side as a secondary stack and probably be a little more focused on in my tournament builds on the Atlanta Green Bay game. On the other side, Julian Edelman, I like him. Outside of that, N'Keal Harry's ADOT is among the lowest in the entire league among receivers. Sure, that gives him some PPR floor, but does that do anything for his upside? It doesn't seem like that. So for me, I think James White is quite cheap, especially on DK with that PPR. This game isn't probably where I'm going to locate the gravity of my tournament builds, though.
All right. And then, chat, sorry, we're going to set aside a bunch of time at the end here for questions. If you're throwing them out there now, that's fine. If it's kind of pertinent to the game or what we're talking about, I'll definitely throw it in. If it's going to be 2v2s or something like that, I'm just going to let it go by. So that's what I wanted to say for that one. They did bring up defenses. So let's cover that just briefly. So obviously we have the Patriots defense, who is good. You need to know your scoring systems. Both FanDuel and DraftKings cap out at -4 fantasy points when you're playing the defense. I want to say that, last week the Ravens did not record a sack, but they did force the first Kansas City turnover of the season. The Chargers and the Texans each had a sack, but no turnovers, obviously. I said the Patriots are a viable option, but just know you're hoping to catch lightning in a bottle with a return touchdown. I do want to say this. In the 2018 AFC Championship game, New England took down Mahomes 4 times during their overtime victory in Arrowhead. So it is possible. It wasn't that long ago, but Mahomes he does a good job of not getting sacked. So we're looking for that splash play, that lightning in a bottle play. I said on the other side, Kansas City, I'm interested in their defense. I said Hoyer should be good for a couple of sacks and 1 turnover, particularly if Kansas City's able to get out to an early lead. They are the most expensive option on DraftKings by $1,200 and by $600 on FanDuel, but I do believe they are viable. On DraftKings, if you are playing that one showdown slate, they are a viable option there as well for a differentiation play. So I like the Kansas City defense, but we're paying for them tonight. Starting off over here on the second Monday night game. I love the doubleheader. We've got the Falcons at the Packers. 56.5 over under. For those of you just tuning in or living under a rock, Davante Adams has been ruled out, with the Green Bay organization citing an abundance of caution and Davante Adams citing, his unhappiness. So we got a couple of high-flying offenses here, and the Packers, though they have not allowed a 300-yard passing performance, they have allowed multiple aerial scores in each of their 3 games. And I think my analysis that I put down was, as long as one of his primary receivers is healthy, he's got both of them tonight. As long as one of them was healthy, I think Matty Ice is going to be the first person to put 300 yards on Green Bay this year. What is your projection for Matty Ice passing?
Yeah, I actually like him a lot this night because in part because I said I was I'm tentatively off of Mahomes right now. It's coming in quite chalky, and I just think the game environment doesn't set up at all for him. The Falcons are the ideal team to be playing their receiving weapons, their quarterback, really everyone but the running backs and the defense, I guess, because their defense is terrible. They're not afraid to air it out. They're not afraid to throw aggressively downfield. And like you said, we are going to have the full slate of weapons for Matty Ice. So I think, like you said, he has that 300-yard bonus easily within his range of outcomes. I don't see them giving a ton of work to the running backs, especially in a scenario where we can relatively project that they will be trailing versus the Packers. I think it's so easy to pivot off of, at least move a lot of your ownership onto Matt Ryan. I think the ownership is going to come in favor of Aaron Rodgers, in favor of Patrick Mahomes. And while those are both great quarterbacks, sometimes the game sets up, even if we don't believe Matty Ice is as talented or as good of a play necessarily as these other quarterbacks, the ownership for tournaments has me on him. And it might sound crazy, but I think he'll be easily the quarterback I am most overweight on.
All right. I see a little alumni there in chat. We've got Chris Baggs dropping on in to see what his old pal is up to. Somehow I knew he was there because I threw out the splash play. Check out his Twitter. He's got a fun little side project he's been working on with Pete Overzet and a few others. If you guys like a little fun there with daily fantasy sports, those guys definitely can bring it. So our projections here, if we look at Odds Shopper, so if you go to awesemo.com, up top, you can see a whole set of different sites that we have under our umbrella now. We've got season-long fantasy football site. We've got Awesemo Odds, which is our betting site for betting information. There's a lot of free articles on there every day, props of the day, crazy bets of the day, degenerative bet of the day, fun stuff like that. We've got the Awesemo Podcast Network, which we put all of our shows out there, with the exception of anything that's alive before lock is out there on our podcast network. It's available on all the different podcast platforms. We have one main channel, or you can get it by sport. So if you're someone that has a lot of or running out of data on your phone, you can just pick, I want the football one, and then just keep the football episodes or baseball or however you want to do that. If you get the main one, you might get 4 or 5 shows a day. But what we've got over here is Odds Shopper. So what Alex and team have been working on the back end is a very elegant interface here that allows you to search player props, any sorts of odds, money line bets, team bets, futures bets, all the good stuff across half a dozen different sports betting sites. So we've got Sugar House, Bet Rivers, BetMGM, FanDuel, DraftKings, and PointsBet. So all you got to do for player props, you just click on the player prop you want, type in the player's name, and all of their bets come up. So I put in Matt Ryan. So this is going to dovetail with No House Advantage, but I'm looking at the Awesemo odds. So we have BetMGM that has the over-under at 312.5. That's up there. PointsBet is 309, and then everybody else is 305.5, including our friends over there at No House Advantage. Oh, actually, No House Advantage is 306.5. Awesemo's median projection is 290. We've said we like 300. I don't know. 312 is a lofty number. A lot of things can go wrong. Remember, someone gets hurt. There's some interceptions. Craziness happens. Would you go over or under 305, or pardon me, 306.5 for No House, now knowing what all the other betting sites are at?
Yeah, who just has it like 312? 312 kind of seems crazy to me. I'd still probably take the under on 305. I think my play on Matt Ryan is more that like 300 is fairly easily projected for him. And probably, I would say him more than maybe any other quarterback has the potential to reach that, despite the fact that the Packers are favored in this game. That probably does lead them to a bit of a more run-heavy script. Matt Ryan trailing is awesome. He is fantasy gold when trailing. So I think I'd still bet the under in the sense of a median projection will favor an under on such a high number. But where my fantasy dollars and my tournament leverage is going is the over. I think that's kind of the important differentiation point, is that I'm not saying Matt Ryan is guaranteed to smash tonight. I'm saying he has a chance of smashing, and the ownership is not going to reflect that, in the sense of we're seeing well over at least, and maybe well over a third of the field showing up on Mahomes and Rodgers. So I'd still bet that under. The median projection says that it's slight advantage towards the under. But in terms of the ownership projection, I think the ownership projection reflects a bit of value on Matt Ryan. So I think that's kind of the important difference to make when you're looking at median projections and making prop bets, where I take the under, and when you're looking at tournament leverage and how to build a winning lineup, and I'll take the over with my ownership.
All right. I see Alex Smith in chat thinks we have too many ads, but this show's free. That's how this works. But tell you what, I'll make you a deal, Alex. You rally everybody there in chat. We have 1,300 people watching. You get us up to 200 likes. We're not that far away. You get us up to 200 likes, I'll skip the next ad read. Hopefully Tom's not watching. Or Tom's always watching. I know that. I know this because he will message me and say, EMac, I'm watching. All right. Let's talk. So we kind of got there on Matty Ice. We have Todd Gurley, we've got Brian Hill, and we've got Ito Smith. So Gurley getting the leverage carries, that we know, getting more of the opportunities, but Brian Hill and Ito Smith have been combining to be on the field about 40% of the time this year. I'm not really interested in any of these guys. Is that a reasonable approach? Are we missing something? And then let's think about it also with the single game perspective. I'm still not really interested in any of these guys.
Yeah, no, I'm in complete agreement with you that the Ito Smith and the Brian Hill concerns should be real. And we saw, I think it was last week, a long Brian Hill run. We haven't seen long Todd Gurley run. He's just not Todd Gurley. He's getting pseudo Todd Gurley volume, but like, is it enough to make him clearly the number 3 back on this slate? Am I sure James White can't outscore him? Am I sure that Jamal Williams can't be a better points per dollar value and make the optimal lineup? Not to the extent that it seems like the public is. So both in terms of Showdown, where I don't think the game script sets up well for him, and the overall main slate, where I just think his price and his ownership are going to push me down towards a guy potentially like James White. Even Rex Burkhead maybe falls in that range. I'm not going to be as excited about Todd Gurley as the field is. I think you could probably play some of the backups in Showdown, specifically Brian Hill, but you could certainly play Ito Smith as well. And this is a Showdown slate that actually has some money up for grabs. So maybe it makes sense to get different in that aspect.
All right, James White or Todd Gurley on the 2-game slate?
In tournaments, I'm actually going James White pretty cleanly. He's a bit cheaper. Price isn't really too much of a concern for me tonight. Like you said, there's a lot of value at receiver with like guys like Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Robert Tonyan at tight end if you want to pivot. I think is a fine salary saver. Interesting pivot off Travis Kelce. So the money isn't really the issue. It's just a matter of ownership. We're seeing very little ownership on a short slate on 2 games. Seeing very little ownership on James White. And it's not like he's coming back from an injury. He's coming back from a very unfortunate personal leave, but I don't think he should be limited in any sense. This is a system that he's played in for his entire NFL career. Now they move to a quarterback who is not mobile and probably doesn't consume a ton of pass attempts by rolling out and not looking at his running back or straight up running the ball. So I think this projection actually might end up working out better for him with Brian Hoyer in the lineup. And I don't think he'll be limited in the sense of he's not coming back from a pulled hammy. So James White for me in tournaments, I don't think he's a better, raw projection play. But based on the ownership, I feel quite good about my James White exposure tonight.
All right. Just going over to the old internal Slack, make sure I don't have any messages from anybody. Super important. Just checking. Always checking. Let's go on to the receivers here, because this we actually have something to talk about. So we've seen Julio not practice for weeks at a time, come in and play and be fine. We've seen him be gimpy and missing significant chunks of quarters and drives on the sideline because of tender soft tissue issues, multiple seasons. This is nothing new. The only thing that's new is he keeps getting older. So where I get a little nervous with him is just that we don't know what we're getting. Is he going to crush our hopes and dreams? I don't know. If you don't play him and he does well, yes. And if you play him and he's a decoy, no. Now, I don't think he's the Roddy White decoy from, I think it was Roddy White, way back in the day where he was standing out on the side and like literally couldn't walk against, I remember a game against Minnesota or something, or a playoff game or something where he was just like, yeah, I just out there, you got to go cover him. But he's not that. But it just makes me nervous. Now, Calvin Ridley dinged up. I'm sure you're going to tell us. Did you already mention air yards on Calvin Ridley? I know there's
I don't think so, but I would guess he's got a lot of them.
This is a lofty comment. 200 air yards more than any other receiver, including all of those that played already this week.
Oh my God, that's insane.
So there we are on that one. So I'm leaning towards him. Sore ankle. We'll see. I'm sure he's receiving some treatment in air quotes for that. And then Russell Gage through the concussion protocol. What do you want to do with these guys? I feel like I don't mind a certain level of risk, but when it comes to Julio Jones, I just don't know anymore. But then I'm the same guy that says every Showdown show, I wave goodbye to my money as soon as I submit my lineups. So I don't know what's going to happen on this one. What does an impartial person say? And can you be that impartial person for us?
Yeah, I don't know if I can be that impartial person. I really like Calvin Ridley coming out of college. He produced at a young age, which is a great indicator for future production. And he's made me a lot of money in best ball so far. At least he's teamed me up to do so. But I will say the only thing that makes me any bit bearish on Calvin Ridley is the price difference on DraftKings. I think FanDuel also has Calvin Ridley as the higher price player, but he still deserves to be like that price. Like I think at this point, it's fair to say that Calvin Ridley should be viewed as the number one wide receiver on this team in terms of fantasy. You look at the air yards numbers, you look at the fluky, but still maybe less fluky when you consider the history of Julio Jones, touchdown numbers favoring Calvin Ridley, and he's got back-to-back 100-yard games. I think it's fine to double stack these guys as well in your Matt Ryan lineups, because we saw week one, you could even triple stack with Russell Gage. All three of them, 12 targets on the dot. I think all three of them went over 100 yards. My only big lean here is that Calvin Ridley, despite, he's more expensive, is going to be 10% more or less owned than Julio Jones. And as we've talked about all night on a slate where, at least I've talked about this, on a slate where like I'm doing anything I can to avoid chopping, there are only two teams to play players from. And it seems like it's going to be quite concentrated. There are not a ton of great deep options. I'm going to be taking ownership edges at any point I can get when I think the projection is close. Do I think Julio Jones is probably a small, better value play when he's almost 1,000 cheaper? Sure. But do I think getting chopping off 10% of the field in terms of ownership is very important on a slate where I don't want to have the nuts and then chop with 100 other lineups? Yeah, that's quite important to me. So I think Calvin Ridley is probably my preferred play, but I'll have exposure to both, and I don't mind being with the field on Julio, probably because I see Tyreek Hill up there, and I know that that's an offense that I'm more or less looking to go with guys like Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Travis Kelce, and some ancillary pieces. So I don't mind the ownership on either. I do give a slight lean in terms of tournament to Calvin Ridley. And like you said, I'm not too worried about the risk. Both these guys were slated to suit up a few days ago. I think reports were pretty much all positive they would play. When we know that they're going to play that early in the week, relative to this being a Monday game, so we had a few days to prepare, that typically means they're mostly at fully healthy. So not concerned about the health as much as I am just for Julio Jones. What do the target shares? What do the air yard share look like? And I think it kind of favors Calvin Ridley.
Yeah, and those are all good points. I'm going to drop a little link here in chat. You guys didn't get us to 200 likes, so there's an ad read coming unless we get to 250. Let's show Josh Engelman how it's done. Any like for us is a like that does not go to Josh. But check out our pinned tweet over there on Awesemo.com. We have a nice little giveaway here. We've got who will have more passing yards tonight is the question, Matt Ryan or Aaron Rodgers. And then what you have to do is like and reply to this tweet and be following Awesemo_COM and Awesemo NFL. Doesn't matter if you get the question right, as long as you've answered it and followed those two accounts, you will be in the drawing for a $250 giveaway. That sounds pretty good. $250. I don't mind that. I don't think you guys will either. Jump on over there to Awesemo_COM on Twitter. Read the details. Got the pinned link or the tweet right there in chat as well. All right. Did that work? I see. Did Josh? Oh, we're at 222. That was a nice little push there. Get us to 250. I'm telling you, get us to 250. I've got the other one all queued up just for you guys. All right, back to the notes. Tight end. So my notes, Hayden Hurst is the best tight end on the slate tonight in the non-Travis Kelce division.
All right.
That's about all I got.
You can expand on that because I actually don't hate Robert Tonyan. Like clearly has run ahead of Jay Sternberger and Josiah DeGuara, who I think's been nicked up with some injuries. So I'm not even sure what you could like.
Okay, so let's here we are for Hurst. Third most targets on the team, tied with Julio. Yes, Julio's been dinged up and he missed the game, but he has 16 targets. He is down the pecking order. Russell Gage seemingly there, whatever they're doing with the running backs, etc. But what are we thinking? 43 passing attempts seems about reasonable tonight. That's a lot going around. So I do think Hayden Hurst is a viable option, and he is definitely fair game in the single entry contest. It's going to be a battle between him and Tonyan. So I'm curious to see what you have to say about there, because I don't know who's going to be playing any of the receiver positions, it feels like, because there's two entirely missing functional healthy guys, or normally healthy guys, that are leaving a massive void there. Defense and special teams, I want to point out that Aaron Rodgers has been sacked twice this season. Green Bay is the only team that is not allowed a turnover. I do not want to play the Vikings, I said that's twice. I don't know why I'm transposing Atlanta and Vikings. We've got the Atlanta defense, just not worth it. I will say over his last 177 games played, We think he gets sacked a lot. It's really 2.4. And that 2.4 number stayed pretty steady throughout his career. It was very interesting because I was trying to find chunks where he was just getting sacked a bunch. And there were seasons where he'd get sacked 7-8 times in a game, but they all normalized out. It was really bizarre how it worked out for the most part. But speaking of which, what do you want to talk about our future Hall of Famer here without Alan Lazard, without Devontae Adams, without Mercedes Lewis?
Yeah,
15-year veteran Mercedes Lewis.
Yeah, you named all the reasons that I want to play Robert Tonyan and Marquez Valdes-Scantling as well. He's a guy who had 4,900. I'm fine with eating that chalk. His targets, not only is he going to see a lot of them, he's got one of the highest ADOTs in the league. So his targets come at a premium, and he's going to see a lot of them. And we saw it was the first game with Devontae Adams out. Alan Lazard and Marquez Valdes-Scantling both had good games, and they both didn't see their ADOTs drop. And I think that's something that we should know that that's backed up by the numbers, that a receiver's ADOT is something that carries with them wherever they go and whoever their quarterback is. It's something that is kind of inherent in their nature. Receivers run the same or similar-ish routes in the similar parts of the field. So if we see an uptick in Marquez Valdes-Scantling's volume, sure, some of it might come to the short to intermediate range. That probably just means he gets at least 1 or 2 more deep targets. So MVS, I'm all in on. I think the chalk, you have to eat some chalk on the slate. You can't get away from everything. And then on the other side, Robert Tonyan is the same argument, essentially. If you're going to get a guy who we know they have no other options, like they're turning to Tyler Ervin, a converted running back to receiver, to be one of their receivers. They have like other guys who will be starting at receiver who have not gotten a target this year. Robert Tonyan, I think we could see, if anything, play almost all the snaps. And when they want to, instead of taking him off, they'll just play 2 tight ends. So for me, Tonyan and Hurst are both fine plays. I would just say I'm probably leaning towards Tonyan in terms of the volume he could see. It's kind of the opposite effect of Hayden Hurst, where Hayden Hurst has a much more difficult squeeze for volume, but the pie is so much larger. Like you said, 40 plus, 43, 45, 50 passing attempts for Matt Ryan. Probably won't see 50 passing attempts for Aaron Rodgers, but the target share numbers should be better for Robert Tonyan. I think both are fine pivots off of Travis Kelce. I don't think you have to get off Kelce, but I can see why you would want to, where there's going to be a lot of chalk there. Tanyan's my slight lean. He's also quite cheap. So I go with Tonyan. And in terms of the defenses, another spot where I'm kind of struggling with this, because I think maybe I'm just weak, because I know defenses are quite random, but they're also it is very useful to be a home favorite. And both of the chalky defenses are unsurprisingly home favorites. And we do know that like quarterbacks own a lot of their pressure stats. Rodgers and Mahomes just don't they're not like even Russell Wilson, who despite being awesome, does take a lot of sacks. They don't throw interceptions. They don't take sacks. That makes even like when you say, oh, these games have high totals, we could see a lot of variance. Their error bands are much smaller than a guy, even potentially like Russell Wilson, who struggled last week, or obviously Josh Allen, who's been sick, but can just make dumb plays. They don't make a ton of mistakes. Like Rodgers' biggest mistake is throwing it away too often. That in no way helps the defense. So I don't see the opposing defenses, despite being super low owned. It's difficult for me to imagine. Not impossible. Anything can happen, but it is difficult for me to imagine either the Falcons or New England being great plays. Maybe you could argue just New England because it'll be a worse game environment for offenses, better for defenses. I hate to say it. I think I'm kind of eating the chalk on defense this week. And let me throw a question back to you. Travis Kelce, awesome play, essentially has wide receiver volume, like good wide receiver volume coming from Patrick Mahomes. Would you consider going double tight end, given that we could have some value on Tonyan or, like you, Hurst? I think double tight end is in play on a tiny slate.
Yeah, absolutely. And I bring this one up a lot, but I say Kelce is essentially wide receiver 1. Last year was 4th in receiving yards, 4th in the league with 1,229, 11th with 136 targets, 8th in the league with 97 receptions. 5 touchdowns were disappointing. He's already got 2 this year. Yeah, I have zero problem with that. I think of him as a receiver and not a tight end. I'm seeing one question here in chat, and we're about to get to the question phase. We have 15 minutes to go. We've got a Robert Tonyan versus N'Keal Harry in their flex spot.
I think I would still go Harry based on what we know will be target volume. His market share numbers have been quite good, whereas Tonyan doesn't have that full same league. He has the 1 0-point outing in week 1 that still won people so much money because it was on the Packers stack. I would probably still lean N'Keal Harry, although you could probably make the argument that Robert Tonyan in the flex is going to be quite low owned. So I think maybe in the largest field tournaments, it's not a bad pivot to have. in one of your lineups. If you're playing single entry on smaller fields, though, I will take just the better median projection in N'Keal Harry.
All right, let's do a little, while we're getting some questions geared up here. For those that are getting here late, yes, Devontae Adams is out. Julio and Ridley are in. So we've got, let me just clear this out so I can do this way. So we got obviously 4 quarterbacks. I'm looking at DK right now, and we'll talk FanDuel in a minute here. We've got Mahomes, Rodgers, Ryan, and Hoyer. I think you just go, if you're hand building a lineup, do you start with Mahomes?
I don't think you have to. I guess probably they're getting full right now. I don't think you have to. I think in small tournaments, you're probably, just going with a lineup that is quite similar to cash with 1 or 2 pivots. So you can start with Mahomes. I don't think you'd be crazy for pivoting to, for me, it's Matt Ryan. If you like Aaron Rodgers, that's fine. Only because, like I've talked about, I don't see the game environment being quite as good. And that's just my personal opinion on the Brian Hoyer situation. I could very much see the scenario you talked about where Bill Belichick's like, sometimes you get dealt a loss before the game starts. I kind of feel that way. So I don't love the Chiefs side as it pertains to their cost and ownership. But in small field tournaments, which is probably a lot of what's left out there right now, Mahomes is certainly the best point, like the best just projection play.
Would you go down to, and I'm playing around with the cash lineup. If you go Hoyer, you can get Jones, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Edelman, Ridley, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Kelsey, who was your guy? Tonyan. And then I got enough left for the Chiefs defense. Boom! There's my cash lineup. And all of a sudden, here we are. It's Brian Hoyer by a nose. Now, as I mentioned, I'm horrible at cash games, but there we go. At least this season. But with my 20-ish% win rate. No, not ROI. And it's probably closer to 15. Main slate. Short slates, I do much better. But anyway, I want to throw that out there. All right. For running backs, is it everything you can do to just get in Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Aaron Jones and just let the chips fall where they may? What do you do? Where do you start to rank James White in there as you're building out lineups?
Yeah, I mean, if you're playing cash or even like small field tournaments right now, it's not hard to get those guys in, and you should be doing everything you can. It's those 2 guys in a giant chasm between them and Todd Gurley. And then a smaller gap, but a gap between James White, and I'm not super into Rex Burkhead. I think, though, James White is honestly, I mean, maybe we can't say for sure what his role will be coming back from a few games absent. And, the situation doesn't look great with Brian Hoyer. I think it's fine to pivot down from Todd Gurley to James White. Todd Gurley could get 10 carries and 2 targets and absolutely bust, and James White could go out and get, on the other side, 10 targets and 2 carries. So I think James White is actually a fine pivot down, even in small field tournaments. Maybe a bit risky for cash, but that flex spot doesn't have a ton of great options if you're trying to get a running back in. I think it's fine to play James White over Todd Gurley in pretty much any scenario.
Sorry, trouble with the mute button there. Let's see. Harry instead of Edelman is a question here for Samuel C.
I mean, I wouldn't do that. I mean, I've talked about it. I don't love the ADOT. I don't even like the ADOT in N'Keal Harry. It's like it's like outside like the top 90 receivers or something. Whereas Edelman's actually pushing the ball downfield, over 50% share of the air yards, which is number 1 in the NFL. I mean, sure, you could argue you save price and you don't dedicate as much of your salary to a Brian Hoyer offense. I don't really care. I'm not too interested in N'Keal Harry. Definitely going to come in under the field on him. And I think Edelman's ownership is much more warranted.
At what point did they sort of flip roles, Edelman and Harry?
I know. It's quite strange because Harry didn't project as like this Jarvis Landry type of receiver coming out of college.
Perfect comp. Yeah, that's the perfect.
Yeah, man. He didn't project as that coming out of college, though, but that is exactly how they're using him. And they're actually using Edelman not as like exclusively a deep threat, but he is pushing down the field. Like I said, number 1 in the NFL in market share of air yards, over 50% of the air yards. He is the guy they're using to really move the chains in chunk yardage situations. N'Keal Harry is like a dump-off guy. He slants and screens and short digs or whatever. That doesn't make me excited for tournaments. I guess he projects well as a cash play, but I don't even love tethering myself to Brian Hoyer in cash unless I know I'm going to be backed by air yards. So yeah, I'm not like playing Jarvis Landry's, like the Jarvis Landry to Brian Hoyer this night. I'm not doing it. You can't make me. I won't do it. And now he's going to score 2 touchdowns.
All right. I want to throw out one more reminder for the giveaway. It's over the pin tweet over there at Awesemo_COM. I'm going to drop it into the link here. All you got to do is go follow the instructions on that. It's simple. Reply to the tweets and follow both Awesemo_COM and Awesemo NFL with who you think will throw more passing yards tonight, Matt Ryan or Aaron Rodgers. By answering that question and following the instructions, you will be in a drawing for $250. There you go. All right. Let's see. Nothing popping up on Twitter. We like to see that. I'm going to download my CSV file and look to upload here. We did get to 261 likes, so thank you all for that. Let's see what we got with questions here. How do you feel about, well, you kind of talked about just eating the chalk. So, Dano, if you want to back up just a minute there, we did say, well, just hit it one more time. The MVS chalk is, just take it and differentiate somewhere else. Even if he has a bad game, you're going to be riding along with, what do you think, 70% of the field probably tonight? 60%?
Yeah, I'd say probably
2 game slates, things
60.
get skewed. So
yeah, I'd say like 50 to 60, but over half the field right now. I'm looking at him as a top 3 projected play, and there's kind of a gap between 3 and 4 in terms of ownership. He looks like a top 3 owned play. You've probably got to play at least 1, if not 2 of the top 3. And yeah, you can get different elsewhere. I would take the savings from Marquez Valdes-Scantling and take them yummy air yards.
Yes. People are saying, yeah, I agree that MVS is not the best by any stretch, but he's one of the few guys on the field, and he did have moments last year. So let's not overlook him too much. All right. What else are we getting here? A Gurley fade. I am not a fan of Gurley, so I'm going to hit the little crunch button here and see what starts coming out, but I am not really a fan of him myself. How are you?
Yeah, we're on the same page with that. Of all the running backs on this slate, he'll probably be the one I am most under the field on as a portion of his ownership. I'm fine. I like Clyde Edwards-Helaire as a pivot. You don't gain a ton of leverage, like 10 or 15% ownership, maybe even less by the time it locks. But I like that pivot a little bit. But really, I'm just trying to get both of these guys. I like a little bit of James White in my lineups. At that point, I'm already getting there are only so many lineups you can build on this slate. Todd Gurley isn't going to be in many of mine.
Yeah, I'm looking here. Demarius Byrd, we didn't really mention. Well, we kind of mentioned. He's one of the guys that gets targets sometimes. He's always running a route. I didn't say anything about catches, though.
Yeah, I mean, always running a route. Didn't even say much about targets. He's a guy who doesn't get targeted on a ton of his routes. He plays. I know as of a few weeks ago, he led the team in receiving snaps, but that's because Julian Edelman kind of gets subbed out whenever he's not going to be the primary read. N'Keal Harry just gets these short ADOT guys. I don't hate Demir Byrd. I think he probably makes more sense on the showdown slate specifically. But honestly, I would feel better about the leverage I gain with him over N'Keal Harry in the 2-game slate, because I'm just not in on N'Keal Harry.
All right. I am hitting crunch here. Where is it coming out? Ran my first 100, had some various settings here, but throwing it out there. Mahomes 50, Ryan 31, Rodgers 19, Hoyer 1%.
That's about right. We're not Brian Hoyer people on this show.
I set everybody at 35%, but I'm comfortable with where that's coming out. I gave Jones and Clyde Edwards-Helaire 80%. I capped Gurley at 20. I boosted Jamal Williams to 20, and I have Burkhead, White, both at 10, Damian Harris 3. Okay, that feels good. I think this slate feels a little bit more won and lost on the wide receivers. I don't with Jones and Clyde Edwards-Helaire, 80% on my lineups. I'm totally good with that. Julian Edelman, I'm going 60%. Valdes-Scantling, I'm at 60. Calvin Ridley, 45. I pushed Julio Jones down a little bit. I'm still getting 40%. 40% Sammy Watkins. Not sure I like that one. 40% Hill. Yeah, 40% Hill, 40% Gage, 10% Bird, 10% Shepard, 10% Harry. God, is Malik Taylor going to play tonight?
Probably play. Yeah, he probably will.
All right. Well, I've got 4% of him. Renpack wants to know how much money on the table tonight is too much. Well, I don't know, Mr. Six-Figure Wins, because when you get home, you take your pockets out and drop it on the nightstand. That's too much money. Too much money in salary left on DFS. You probably do about 2,000-3,000 tonight if you're looking to get different. And I know you are, Brian. And I know you're playing the big top heavy tournaments, so don't feel bad about leaving salary out there. Tonight, it's almost a pick 'em, especially with Davante Adams out. Otherwise, you're going to consolidate with those wins on everybody. All right, I need to crunch a few more lineups here, but just saying Kelsey, 69%, Tanyan, 25, Hayden Hurst, 16. Oof, Ryan Izzo, let's take him out of the player pool. I got him at 6%. I'm going to leave him out of this next back half of this crunch here and do another 100. And then I'm going to upload my lineups because this is where I start to panic because we're getting close to the deadline. And this is where my co-hosts like to laugh at me. So feel free to laugh. It's okay.
Yeah, well, you do that. I can talk a little bit more about the salary left on the table. On this slate, especially when I've talked about being low-key on the Chiefs tonight, I'm not super into them because of the game environment. That's going to put me on a lot of Tanya and a lot of Marquez Valdez-Scantling. I'll get some Gage. All of these guys are so cheap. Hayden Hurst as well is so cheap that not only does it move me off of popular plays, it moves me off of expensive plays. And a lot of my stacks are just going to have cheap guys. Jamal Williams could be in my stacks. So for me, yeah, like you said, 2-3K in tournaments on the table is perfectly fine.
All right. Always double check your lineup load. I was uploading the wrong slate, which would not have uploaded. So let's put the old player pool in here and let's have some fun. And we'll talk. You guys can get a little 5-minute bonus session here of something went wrong. Well, 5-minute bonus session here of the single game slate for the Falcons and Packers, since we didn't quite get to that. Let me just hit upload here and I can stop panicking. There we go. I'm good. Whew. Played a lot more than I normally do tonight because the contest just kept respawning. So all my 250-man-ish contests just kept popping up. I'm like, all in or more. All of a sudden, I'm like, ooh, I usually only play like $100 on Showdown. I got about 400 in play tonight. And I haven't even gotten to Showdown yet. And then we've got the Monday to Thursday slate that's starting with the Green Bay game. So we have all of that goodness. So hit that like button. We kind of made it to lock here. So thank you for that. If you have some Showdown questions, go ahead and throw those in there now. We'll take those for both DraftKings and or FanDuel. Also want to say, in addition to hitting the like, this is a deal that I'm just going to tell you about because it's for you guys. So we have changed the NFL Express package to include all Showdown content. So that includes player projections, that includes for both production and for popularity. And then it also includes the likelihood that they'll be in the second through fifth or second through sixth slot, or most likely highest score, which helps you understand what's happening when you're doing stuff with the captain. So it's like our boom bust or our stack tool kind of for what we do with the NASCAR drivers or baseball or the boom bust for basketball, et cetera. So it's kind of a hybrid of all of those. So it's $3.95 a week. No special promo code. It's just the NFL Weekly Express package. You get that. In addition to that, you get the Awesemo Big Board, which is him ranking all of his players for the week. You get grades for all of the players, like A, B, C, D, E for value and for points for the sites. And you do get access to Slack chat. So basically, this was a package that he designed that he said, I want people that are playing 2 or 3 times a week to have a fighting chance. I want to make it cheap so they don't feel bad about subscribing to this and just playing a couple times a week, because basically it's $1 per slate. And if you do the Showdown slates, that's 3 nights a week where you get the good stuff. So it's lots of fun. Check that out. It's the Awesemo NFL Express package. Okay. If we are looking at the Showdown slate here, let me pull up my notes. So this is where it gets kind of fun because I wanted to go with Davante Adams. Here was where I was going to be taking the risk. I was hoping people would be a little tentative on that one. I don't feel nearly as good about Julio Jones, but as I mentioned, when I play Showdown, I'm ready to wave goodbye to all of that money because it's just randomness. Anything can happen. It's just pure insanity. So I'm okay playing Julio, I've decided in this one, because I don't really have any other risk to take out there, which is kind of interesting. He is not my number one choice. I'm assuming everybody's number one choice is going to be Aaron Jones. Number 2 is going to be, are you ready? Russell Gage for me. I need the discount. And then that allows me to get either of the quarterbacks. another competent receiver, and then you can go with one of the scrub-a-dubs or the kickers or something else. I don't mind Jamal Williams in this. Probably play 40% of the snaps, and he's always just vulturing around. Now, we do know that Aaron Jones from time to time has run out of the slot, more so too, and I guess it would be, I've lost track of time now, 3 seasons ago, or was he in the league 3? In any event, he is somewhat flexible. They're running out of manpower. So there's a decent chance we could see him and Jamal on the field at the same time, because last week didn't see it very much, and they had the Irvin guy in there. But now they're down 2 receivers, and they were not. I don't think they were expecting that. They don't have much. Their last week's third receiver. His name's escaping me, not Malik Taylor. Darius Shepard played on 37% of the snaps. He played 23 total snaps, and I want to say he had 3 targets. He had 1 target. That was it. That's next man up. So give your quick Robert Tonyan spiel for those that just got home from work and why he is a very viable option, particularly on the showdown slate.
Yeah, don't forget to play him captain. Not a ton of tight ends make the optimal captain spot. It's usually like absolute bosses like George Kittle, like we saw last night. Not going to go out on that crazy limb for Robert Tonyan yet, but like who else are they going to play? One, we've seen him clearly operate in terms of receiving snaps as the team's number 1 tight end over guys like Jay Sternberg. You said Mercedes Lewis out, Alan Lazard out, Devontae Adams out. Like they only have so many live bodies to throw to at this point, and he was run as their number 1 tight end every single week. It's very clear to me that he's going to be on the field for most of their snaps, and they're not going to have a ton of other talented bodies to throw to. I love your Russell Gage call. I think Russell Gage does allow you at the captain spot. You don't have to go crazy over you basically have to build one lineup to get over the field on the captain spot at Russell Gage. You only have to build 1 or 2 lineups if you're not building a ton of lineups to get over the field on him. And he does open you up to a lot of possibilities. And we saw in week 1, he doesn't have a capped upside necessarily just because he's playing alongside Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley. He goes over 100 yards on 12 targets in that game. Playing him allows you to get your Julio Joneses, your Calvin Ridleys, your Aaron Jones, all stacked up in a lineup. I'm not going crazy on it, but that is a build that I will have some exposure to, and I think it makes sense to run him in maybe not a Falcons onslaught, but I want Matt Ryan in that scenario because Ryan probably does have to have a good game for Calvin Ridley to really go off and be the optimal captain. So I would make it a minimum of playing Matt Ryan and then probably one other pass catching option from that team in the flex. Then I think you can either continue going with it in a Falcons onslaught, even if they're playing from behind, that could be the optimal build just because they catch so many passes and go for so many yards, or you can play it more even with a 4-2 or a 3-3.
All right. I see some people asking, yeah, Julio is playing as far as we know. I tried to look for the Packers inactives, but all I'm getting is old stuff. So they may not have announced it yet, I'm guessing. We're right in that sweet spot of not quite an hour and a half before, or right at that. So
they won't. I mean, they won't drop it till 10, or till an hour and a half on the dot before. We're 10 minutes before that. Okay. But I would be relatively shocked. Like I think Schefter and Rappaport all said that Calvin Ridley and Julio Jones are all systems go.
Yeah, the one guy I wanted to see is Josiah DeGuara, the rookie tight end. Leaving no stone unturned. It's worth showdown.
It's worth noting in showdown for sure.
Yeah, for showdown, he was dealing with I believe it was an ankle injury, but he did practice at the end of the week. And okay. Lewis out, we'll see. But he's well down the pecking order for Tonyan and Jay Sternberg. I want to say he was he University of Miami? No, Cincinnati. DeGuara was.
Yeah, you were close though. Physically, location-wise, very close.
Yeah. Fairly. But in any event, we've got those. So let's see if there's any other questions. Please do hit that like button. I would love to get us to 300. We would appreciate it. We've got all sorts of shows coming tomorrow. I want to say there are 4 baseball games tomorrow or 5. There's a lot of baseball tomorrow. So this is the second series or the second wave is starting. We have 5 consecutive, the series are 5 consecutive days, best of 3. They're playing at neutral sites. So while they are playing in Petco Park and Dodger Stadium, it's not San Diego. It's not the Padres and it's not the Dodgers playing at their respective locations. I believe they're playing in Houston. You've got Texas. Globe Life is in action. So those are the 4 stadiums where everybody's at. And then the World Series is already, I can't remember which of those. I don't want to say it's Texas because they have the closable roof, but I believe that's where they'll play the World Series. So these are designated. So just keep an eye on knowing that it's not the same home road splits or park factors. The home road is designated as who will bat last. And that's important as well. But just don't get confused when you start. Because at first I was looking at stuff last night and I'm like, it's going to be how hot in Oakland? 90 I'm like, no. Are they at the neutral sites now? Because it's not going to be 90 degrees in Oakland. And sure enough, they were in the neutral site. So I wanted to call that out. But a lot of content pumping out starting tomorrow at 9 a.m. You're going to get the NBA strategy show. We got game 4 tomorrow night. At 11, you're going to get Laffy, Sal, and Ben on the NFL strategy show. And then at 1 o'clock, you're going to get the MLB live before lock, breaking down what is looking to be a nice slate. At 2:30, you're going to get golf. And then at 8:15 tomorrow, you're going to get Josh, and it looks like Adam Scherer breaking down live before lock, your final chance to get in on that slate. And we got to see, is Rimpak going to win another 100,000? It's just happened.
It might happen. I will tell you right now, Patrick Mahomes just ran the Statue of Liberty where he hides behind his back. Chiefs are so cool.
Oh, goodness. All right. Get us those 300 likes. We're going to get on out of here because I've got pizza waiting for me. So with that, you can follow me at EMac DFS. Kyle is at Kyle Tweets here. And of course, it is Awesemo _COM. With that, gamers, good luck.